Hiya, listeners, and welcome to the Bookish Narwhal. Happy September, listeners. As you just heard, we are now the Bookish Narwhal. The rebrand is going well and so much more aligned with my personality. Check out my Instagram post to learn more. Since I was sick last week, this episode will contain a condensed monthly wrap-up and some anticipated September reads. I'm also going to talk about goals and touch a little on the importance of reading diverse books. Then we're going to get into my chat with YA and NA author Dahlia Adler. She writes titles such as Cool for the Summer, Home Field Advantage, Out on Good Behavior, Going Bicoastal, and Under the Lights. She also runs the website LGBTQ Reads. Now, let's get to it. I cannot believe September is already here. August went by in a blink, but we had some pretty amazing guests here on what is now the Bookish Narwhal Podcast. We got to chat with Adele Griffin, Anne William, and Melissa Ferguson. So if you missed it, go give those episodes a listen. My sincerest thanks to all three women for their time and the loveliest of chats. Did you add any of their books to your TBR? I didn't read as much as I wanted to in August, and what I did read was almost all digital. The physical read I got in was The Irish Connection by Norma Jennings, and I did start Tinderbox by Lynn Alsup. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, so it's spelled A-L-S-U-P. I'm not quite finished with that one, but both of these are powerful stories that are getting 5 stars from me. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably enjoy reading. So tell me, do you want to indulge in unlimited ebooks and audiobooks for less? Try Kobo Plus today. I use Kobo Plus Read, but there are 2 other subscription options available for you audiobook lovers. Each plan comes with a 30-day free trial for new subscribers and gives you access to over 1.3 million ebooks and over 10,000 audiobooks. It's perfect for those of us who find joy in a growing library. You can read on any Kobo e-reader or with the Kobo app, and you can listen with the Kobo app or on select Kobo e-readers. Find links in the episode description to get started on your free trial, or send me a message to find out more. I love the fall. I'm ready for cozy sweaters, seasons, and holidays. I'm also ready for the onslaught of books coming out. What are you excited to read? Some of the ones I'm looking forward to, and trust me, there are a lot. Tinderbox that I was previously talking about, that's coming out on the 12th of this month, which is now September. Bayard Rustin, which was edited by Michael G. Long, and it's coming out on the 26th. Kiss and Spell by Celestine Martin, coming out on the 26th as well. No Crying in Baseball by Erin Carlson, coming out on the 5th of September. And Never Whistle at Night by Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr., coming out on the 19th. Let me ask you a question. Do you love jewelry, especially pieces made with heart in a home studio? I really do. So let me introduce you to Syrian Stone. They're a jewelry company located in the beautiful mountain of Pemberton, British Columbia. I first met Siri through a mutual friend in the post office parking lot of said mountain town, and I had just moved to the area with my husband, and Siri was instantly exuding warmth, positive vibes, and really made me feel more at home. This was 3 years after she taught herself some, as she would say, basic silversmithing skills. But basic my behind. Inspired by nature, all Syrian stone jewelry is made from recycled 925 silver, and only 100% natural gemstones are used. I'm talking about carefully cut and polished semi-precious stones from all around the world. You can also find pieces that are 18 karat gold plated and in a variety of earrings, rings, bracelets, and necklaces. Made for the modern day adventure seeker, these organic designs celebrate imperfect beauty. For promo codes, links, and more, please visit my link in bio on Instagram or in the show description. Now I want to chat about the importance of reading diverse books. Representation is something that's super important to me. So I was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s/early 2000s. Y2K, everybody. And that didn't really leave me with much representation in my youth. Don't get me wrong. You could still be successful if you assimilated or went with the stereotype, but I've never really been a joiner. So it's really important to me to use my platform to help others feel seen. Diversity in literature specifically helps readers to be more compassionate and caring. Reading about other identities and cultures reminds us of the similarities and differences in the human experience. So reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation. It's a powerful tool that serves as a mirror and a window of different emotions and experiences. It reflects the reality of the world we live in, allows us to see each other in a more meaningful way. It allows us to think critically and see when we're wrong and improve upon ourselves. So publishers are becoming more mindful of diversity and representation in the books they publish, or at least they're trying to be, I find, or we hope. And I really love how reading diverse books reaffirms the value of everyone in the community and fosters an environment of inclusivity. So we all want the opportunity to have shared experiences despite differences in age, race, religion, ethnicity, abilities, socioeconomic status, etc. I received the Kobo Libra 2 as a gift from my mom, and it totally changed my reading game. I was getting migraines from too much screen time and needed a solution. The 7-inch HDE ink-carded touchscreen is always glare-free, and Comfort Light Pro's adjustable brightness and blue light reduction tech limits eye strain. It helped enable me to read more by not aggravating my cluster headaches. Score! That isn't even the best part, though. It's fully waterproof, so you can read in the bath or at the beach with ease. It has buttons for when you don't feel like tapping, and you can read in landscape mode or listen to audiobooks. It even holds up to 24,000 ebooks, 150 Kobo audiobooks, or a combination of both. Find links in the episode description to purchase a Kobo of your very own, or send me a message to find out more. What are your goals for September? I really want to try to establish an exercise routine, read all of my October arcs, get a job, and all while trying to stay organized and really be kind to myself. So I know I talk about that a lot, but research says practicing more deliberate kindness and self-compassion is one of the most effective ways to alleviate stress, worry, and just the general anxieties in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I'm a pretty anxious person. So Dr. Kristen Neff is one of the world's leading experts in self-compassion. She describes it as treating yourself the way you would want to treat a friend who is having a hard time. She continues to explain that self-compassion is being patient, kind, and understanding when faced with failure, versus judging and criticizing ourselves for the inadequacies or shortcomings that we may have sometimes. A psychologist in San Diego wrote an article about this that really breaks it down. So if you want to read it, DM me or email me and I'll send you the link. Beginning over 60 years ago with one mother's dream, Linen Chest has remained a family-owned, proudly Canadian business with over 35 locations across Canada. You'll find an amazing selection of quality products because we all value quality and having something no one else does. Shop for everything from bedding to home decor to dinnerware. Paired with excellent customer service, my personal favorite is the price guarantee. Linen Chest stands by their in-store and online pricing for a full year. So if you find the same item at a lower price anywhere else within 365 days of your purchase, not only will they match it, but they give you an extra 10% off the difference, no questions asked. Don't miss the back-to-school promo on now until September 7th. You can save up to $120 on select Nespresso capsule machines and receive a $20 coffee credit. Until October 31st, save up to 70% on thousands of clearance items at linenchest.ca. You can also shop their online exclusive sale on now until September 30th. Save up to 75% off the regular price of select items. For promo codes, links, and more, please visit my link in bio on Instagram or in the show description. Alrighty, listeners, please join me in welcoming our special guest for this episode, YA and NA author Dahlia Adler. Thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So your newest novel, Going Bicoastal, came out in June. Can you tell our listeners a bit of basically what it's about?
Sure. Going Bicoastal is my YA sliding doors, which is, a throwback to, I think it's a 90s movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, which is basically just about having parallel timelines. You make one choice and this happens, and you make another choice and this happens. So the choice that my main character, Natalia, has to face is which parent she's spending the summer with, the dad that she lives with, and that would mean staying home in Manhattan for the summer, or is she going to take a chance and spend the summer with her mostly estranged mom in LA? So the LA half has more kind of like professional certainty, but obviously, further out of her comfort zone with regard to setting, with regard to parent. But there's also a love interest in New York that Natalia has been bumping into and crushing on for a very long time. So there's, that promise maybe if she stays in New York. So, she's got to decide which of those she wants to do, and she can't decide. So she doesn't have to, and neither do you, because the book alternates between what if she had made each choice. So after, I think it's chapter 3, it starts alternating between Natalia in LA and Natalia in New York. And you get to see how both choices would have played out.
And I absolutely loved the story. So I'm dying to know, what was your inspiration for it?
This was actually really direct. There was a book, I think it was 2015 or 2016. I read this book called Two Summers by Amy Friedman, which was also kind of sliding doors. And I just loved the idea of writing a story where the main character experienced two different summers. Summers in particular were very formative for me as a teen because I was a sleepover camp lifer.
I'm so jealous. I never got to go to sleepover camp.
It's a very Orthodox Jewish teen girl thing to do, and that is, what I was. So, and Natalia in the book is Jewish too, although neither she nor any of her friends go to sleepaway camp. But I love that idea of like two different summers and two different locations. And so but I was just like, but make it bi. At the time, I had just like come into my own bisexuality and figured it out with the last book I had written. And at the time, every one of my story ideas was like, but make it bi. And so I always knew that I wanted to do that, but with, a female love interest in one place and a male love interest in another place. And so that's what I did. And a lot of the details from the book are just things like from my teen life or my adult life that are fun. So that's how, all the little pieces mostly come together from things in my life. But that main storyline, dates back to that book. So thank you, Amy Friedman.
I love that. So how did Natalia come to be, and why did you feel it was so important to tell her story?
It's funny because usually my characters are the first thing to come to me, and she was later. She and I have things in common as my main characters, and I usually do. But I just felt she was an extrovert. I don't know why. I maybe would make the most of the places. I am deeply not an extrovert. Like, I do not identify with that aspect of her at all. But like, her humor and some of the things she's into and whatever are mine. So she's sort of some elements that are me and some elements that are very different from me. Like, she's an artist. I have no artistic ability. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I usually have a better handle on how characters came to be. And she just was like, I will tell you how to tell my story. The one thing I can tell you about her that's very intentional is that she does not change. So she is the same person in LA and in New York. She does not adopt, different personalities, different coping mechanisms, different anything, which is a very big difference from my book 2 books ago, Cool for the Summer, which is not parallel timelines, but alternating timelines where it flashes back to the summer, goes back to the now, back to the summer, back to the now, where, you know, she's sort of in the process of becoming a different person. And I didn't want to do that again. I really wanted to make it so that she's the same person across the whole book. And I have heard I succeeded at that. So that's the one very intentional thing about her.
You definitely did. And in your opinion, why is LGBTQIA plus fiction important, especially in YA?
I mean, I have a lot of very strong feelings about this. You know, one is obviously the personal. I didn't read an LGBT plus book until I was, I think in college is when I read my first like queer YA, which was Rainbow Road by Alex Sanchez. And I didn't figure out I was bi till I was 29. And it's not that I didn't know the concept. I actually had a friend come out to me as bi in high school, and I hated, you know, in retrospect, I hate how I responded to it. And so I was just like, we didn't even have I didn't have the language for that conversation. I didn't have the understanding for that conversation. I couldn't be there for that friend as I should have been able to be. Like, forget figuring myself out. There's just so much we didn't know. And
we really didn't. We did not know.
No. And now in yeshiva high schools, I hear that there are more openly queer people. But like when I went to my yeshiva high school, you know, all Orthodox Jews, like nobody in my grade was out. And then afterward, like it was clear there were a bunch of queer people, trans people, or at least one trans person. And you know, it was just like nobody could talk about it in the teen years. So I love that that's changed. I hope that you know, the rise of queer YA has been part of that conversation. But I just think it's so important for everybody to have the vocabulary for that conversations, whether they themselves are queer or trans or not. And then also there was just something about, there are some marginalized identities where, you know, by and large, obviously there are always exceptions, you know, everyone in your family shares the same thing. I'm a marginalized religion, but so is everybody in my family.
Yeah.
For example, but if you're queer, you really can, like, it's totally likely you're the only person in your family and you don't have somebody in your immediate vicinity. You don't necessarily have any friends who are out. The likelihood that you are the only one, as far as you know, I think is so much greater than a lot of other marginalizations. And so, you know, books are the thing that help you feel not alone. Books are the thing that help you navigate your feelings. Books give you language. Books help you understand the ways that your relationships, that your conversations, that your identity, you know, all these things might be different. So I remember it struck me when I was writing my first queer YA, which was, I wrote it in, I think, 2013. It published in 2015, called Under the Lights. And I just wanted to write a very heavy on consent scene because I'm like, this doesn't necessarily look the same for two girls as for a guy and a girl. Like, I know how, you know, if you are well informed enough, if you're lucky even to know how to have the conversations about a guy and a girl having sex, you know, cis guy and girl having sex, and you know the guy is not supposed to do this and the guy is supposed to check in with you, and there's so much on this gender imbalance. What happens when you're the same gender? How do you know who's supposed to check in? Like, you know, and again, blah blah, exceptions to everything. Not every situation is covered in the same way, but I was like, this is just such a big thing. If I did want to have a sexual relationship with a girl, like, how would I know how to apply the same things I'd already learned? We're not covering this in sex ed. We're not covering this in my conversations, you know, with the sex talk with my parents. Like, none of this is coming up. And so I think it's so important to give language, to give comfort, to give a mirror or a window of, you know, all these things, all the reasons.
I love that though. And so is there anything that you edited out of this book?
Interesting question. I don't think so. This book was like, excuse me. It was, the final version is frighteningly close to my first draft, to be honest. Writing with a full-time job and two young children is really hard. And I wrote this book like at night, not just after work, but after work, then, you know, taking care of my kids, then bedtime. And so I didn't have a ton of time to get this wrong and to mess around with it too much. And if anybody, I mean, I'm sure if my agent or my editor or anybody thought that I should have, that it was a wreck and I needed to take it apart. But this was not a very heavily edited book. This was just a book I had to turn and write the first time. And I definitely got an extension to do that, you know. But this is not a book that is very different in its final version. Whereas if my next book ever manages to make it off my computer onto somewhere else, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've edited that one. So it happens to be this book was not heavily edited, and I don't think anything was removed.
So did you hide any secrets in the story that only a few readers would find?
There's a lot of references to my past books. There are some that like nobody finds, which is humbling. There are some that a lot of people find, but there are references to, for anybody who's read my older books, there are references to Under the Lights, Out on Good Behavior, Cool for the Summer. I mean, Cool for the Summer is the most obvious because characters appear. The lead and love interest from Cool for the Summer appear in multiple scenes.
Okay.
And they're fairly prominent in this book. So as like, maybe not secondary characters, but tertiary characters. So if you read, and then at the very end, in one of the timelines, there's a home field advantage reference. And there's a whole bunch of Poe references, which is supposed to be like a nod to His Hideous Heart. So if you've read my catalog, you can find a million things. Very few people get all of them. And then there's just a billion things that are like little nods to things in my life.
So
what stuff I did as a teen. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually so fun though.
Yeah, it was really fun to write. It was incredibly self-indulgent, and I had to like convince myself I was at the point in my career where I could do that. But I decided I am.
I love that. Did you have anybody reaching out to you being like, I remember when this happened?
Oh, yeah. Oh, not old stuff. Because I think that stuff is much more closely tied in my head. Like I remember something, I'm like, this inspired this, but like it doesn't have that same obvious connection to anybody else. But I do love when readers catch the references to my other books. They're like so excited they saw, you know, how Laura and Jasmine ended up or what happened with Amber and Jack. Like I love when people get that.
I love that. So what does research for your books look like?
It depends. And truthfully, for the most part, because I don't have a ton of time to write, I've had to gravitate toward my ideas that require less research. Home field advantage was an exception. I needed to read so much about football and cheerleading for that. And I still got so much stuff wrong. Thank God for friends who know this stuff way better than I do. And Florida, so much research into Florida. Because like I've been to Florida a million times, but not the area I wrote about. There's a lot of that. But yeah, for going by coastal, I did not need quite as much because I live in New York. I've spent a lot of time in LA. There are some very foodie scenes, which was a lot of fun for me because that's based on a kind of dinner party-ish thing that friends and I do. So a little research done for that to get, you know, some international dishes in there. Because normally I keep kosher and sort of all the friends I do this with, so our food choices are a little bit more limited. So when the sky was the limit with getting to choose what dishes to do, that was fun research for me. But yeah, there's not a ton in going by coastal because it's, you know, a lot of lived stuff. There's some stuff about graphic design. Thankfully, that is what my father does, which is what inspired that. So this was the first time ever that I sent him a few scenes of my book to correct, and correct he did again. Had it all wrong. So that was very helpful. But
it's
something
so
like,
helpful though.
Yeah, that was super helpful. I mean, this is part of how I choose things like parental professions is like, do I know people who have those jobs who can advise me as needed? But home field advantage was a total exception. I mean, that I had to read so much football. I thought my husband would be helpful, but it's very different, you know, rules for professional football versus high school football. And there is no Jewish high school football league or cheerleaders. We don't have that. So there's none of us went to school with football. None of us went to school with cheerleading. It was a very terrible idea for me to write this book. I'm so glad that people say it came out good, but like all credit to Maggie Hall and Sarah Henning, the two friends who are also YA authors who helped me a ton with the football stuff, and Lauren Gabaldi, who was there for all the Florida stuff. Oh my God, I could not have written a remotely credible book without those three people. So, but yeah, sports, when I don't know the sports, tend to be like the most extreme research for me. I wrote a lacrosse book a long time ago, which was like because I didn't know I was going to write a book with a secondary character as a main character. And in the book, she's a lacrosse player. And I had to like watch lacrosse games and read lacrosse coverage. Reading coverage of sports is a really big part of the research because you kind of get a better idea for what terminology people actually use colloquially.
Yeah.
Um, all of that. Yeah. Now for my new book, it's a lot of reading New England boarding school calendars and schedules. That's the biggest part of my research right now. It's really fun.
So do you find that your writing process changes much like as you publish each book?
It kind of has to, but it's more about like just my life stage. I mean, it's not like I used to write on the weekends almost entirely. Now I have to write at night when I can, and I don't usually get the weekends. So it's kind of like that, but I wouldn't say my process varies that much. I used to use beat sheets and stuff a lot more. I used to outline a lot more. Now I just don't have the time. When I outline, it kind of usually looks the same, which is like I'll write what happens in the next, like a paragraph each for the next few scenes so that when I sit down, it's not without having some direction. But yeah, there's so many things you can build as an author, and your craft and your process and your methods. I've just never had the time to do any of that. So I am, there's people who go on retreats and who take classes and who just spend so much time improving their craft. And I am not one of those writers. So for me, all I can do to try to improve myself really is just like read, and then keep challenging myself with the stuff I do. So doing different perspectives and different kinds of timelines and stuff. I mean, that for me is sort of, but even then I write linearly. Like people assumed I wrote Going Bicoastal like I did. I wrote the New York half and I wrote the LA half, and like I did not. I wrote it absolutely in order.
How do you find your writer friends help you to become a better writer?
The truth is, it's just reading. Like it's not even writer friends necessarily. I just read really good books, um, I don't get to see writer friends that often, so I don't even get to discuss craft. I mean, like I'm in author discords, but the truth is, at this point, so much of it is just like venting about the industry. You don't really get to the craft point. But it is really interesting when I do get to hear other people talk about kind of their processes and how they put their books together and their research strategies. And those kinds of things. Like that is helpful. Some of them you can apply and some of them you can't. A lot of my friends are full-time authors who go on writers retreats all the time, and it's just a very different experience. But you get to see maybe what you would do if you had more time. People who use Pinterest boards, people who use Scrivener, people who outline in all these different ways, people who write draft zero. I like to at least know what's out there as far as kinds of other methods for preparing a manuscript, even if I do not end up taking any of them. Yeah, that's sort of it at this point. And then I also, because I edit these anthologies, I also get to see other people's strategy, like how their work evolves, how they respond to the critique that I give them. I'm also an editor in my day job, so same thing. I would say I probably learn more from editing than I do just from like having author friends. But it's really interesting to see how people take your notes and how they apply them, and what you can learn from that too.
Actually, you just led me into my next question. Yeah. So how do you find did you find that your day job inspired you to start writing?
Oh no, I've been writing since I was like little. Like I've been writing YA since before I was a YA.
So. Gotcha. So is it more the other way around?
Probably. I've been writing forever, and then I majored in journalism in college, and then I went right into working in publishing. So like this is all, it's been my whole life. Writing and editing and all of that has very much been my entire life. And it wasn't always in the areas of publishing I was interested in being in, but like even while I was working at a science journal, I was copy editing for an erotica publisher on the side. Like publishing has very much always been on my plate on both sides of the desk.
Do you find that being an editor helps you to navigate the publishing industry as an author?
I find the most helpful thing I've ever had as far as that goes probably is self-publishing. Okay. Because you get a better sense of what can be done that maybe your publisher's not doing, and you understand things like SEO and keywords and description and how, Amazon works and, whatever other sites you choose to, Smashwords, whatever, how, advocating for your own book sales and what the effect of book sales are. And I don't end up changing my covers really, but, there's so many kinds of like A/B testing you can do. And there's just a million things you can learn from self-publishing. And I haven't done it in a long time. I'm really excited to hopefully eventually do it again. But there are things traditional publishers can no longer convince you cannot be done once you've done your own book. And that is really helpful. So I think overall, it really helps me advocate for myself a lot. And then the thing is, I haven't been an editor. Like I haven't been in editorial in a traditional publisher since 2008. So it's not, I'm not in the industry in that way, but I deal with industry, the people the most, probably on the publicity side, because I've been a book blogger for so long.
Okay.
So I think that tells me a lot about how that kind of thing works. And then I just, I like to talk a lot to industry people, to authors, to everything, and learn whatever I can. There's still plenty I don't know, and I'm always learning how much I don't know. My agent has taught me a lot. But there's still so much to navigate.
I was going to say you're also the face behind LGBTQ Reads, which is a website dedicated to promoting curated LGBTQ IAP plus literature for all ages.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about that?
I can. So LGBTQ Reads is a site that I started in 2016 as a way to help people find the queer literature that was out there. Some of it, was at the time, there were certainly, there was just less. There was so much less.
Yeah.
And people didn't know how to find it. And the websites that existed tended to cover sort of one category or one genre. Like they could be YA dedicated, or they could be romance dedicated, but specifically lesbian romance or specifically romance. And I just felt like with queer literature, more than many other things, people were more likely to read cross category. And so people would want to be able to find everything in one place. Because you could be older, but be curious, what the teen experience looks like now, or you could be younger and you want to see what a romance, could look like for you, et cetera, et cetera. For a million reasons, I thought that made a lot of sense. And then there were also categories that were really just growing at the time. Like there was almost no middle grade, but it was happening. And so, there wasn't a site for that. And new adult was big at the time, and there wasn't a site for that. And so I figured let's get it all in one place, but it has boomed. I mean, it's really, really wild what the growth has been. And I probably wouldn't have started the website if I would have known how overwhelming it would eventually get. But I've gotten really wonderful feedback on it over the years. I know a lot of libraries use it, and that's really great. And it's, I've done a ton of cover reveals, and it's, I think, good for traditional publishers, for indie authors. And it really, I think it built up its following a lot by doing posts, that traditional publishers share, and then indie authors now have sort of a bigger site to do things like guest posts and cover reveals than they might have had otherwise. And I hope everyone's benefiting from it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So leading into my final question that I have to ask everybody.
Okay.
What is your favorite dessert?
That is a great question. That is an impossible question. I am a very, very big dessert person. My instinctive answer is my husband used to make this peanut butter banana cream pie that was otherworldly good. So for a special occasion dessert, I'm going with that. For like, what's my average whatever? I shouldn't have led on that path. It's too hard. Like cinnamon buns are not dessert, but I love them. I love ice cream, but it feels also like that's not like the dessert answer. There's so much I could say. There's too much I could say. I also just really like a good brownie, strawberry rhubarb pie.
Right?
Let's just put those all together. The dessert bar of those things.
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
Oh, it was so wonderful. And honestly, I loved your book.
Oh, thank you.
It was
Yay.
so well done. And I'm so excited to go and read all of your other ones.
Yay. Well, more things would theoretically make sense.
I was going to
Now
say I'm
you'll-
really excited because like I want to go back and like reread them all and then reread Going Bicoastal and be like, oh my gosh, like it's almost like a new experience.
I mean, some of them are just name references, but Cool for the Summer and Home Field Advantage are the references that are like, I think really mean something at that,
Yeah.
when you get to them. So yeah, it's funny how many people are just like meeting Laura and Jasmine and Going Bicoastal and just thinking they're like these two girls. And it's like, no, they were the stars of another book.
Right? As soon as I found that out, I was like, okay, now I have to read
be
this.
anybody's first read of mine somehow.
Because as soon as I found that out, I was like, I have to go back and read this. And then I have to reread this again, knowing what I know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Well,
amazing.
I hope you enjoy.
Thank you so much. You can find Dahlia's books via your favorite book retailer. You can learn more about Dahlia, her work, events, and other goodies online at dahliaadler.com. Or you can find her on socials. Her Instagram handle is MISSDAHLELAMA, and on Facebook, she's DAHLIAADLER. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Bookish Narwhal. Next week, listen to me chat with author Vanessa Westerman. We talk about all things cover art, teaching, chocolate, art, and more chocolate. Here's a snippet of what's to come.
For me, my favorite experiences, and again, partially the connection with the pandemic, was my experiences with cottaging. So not the typical Muskoka cottage, but Kawarthas, maybe it's a family cottage in a very small area, tiny lake, maybe not even deep enough for huge motorboats. And that was just kind of my idyllic setting. And I was thinking, what would I love to read? And I thought, what I would love to read is a cozy mystery set in cottage country, because that's what I'm missing right now.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Bookish Narwhal Podcast. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I hope you continue to join me and have a wonderful week.